All right, let's do this. Well, thank you everybody for joining this webinar. My name is Thiago. I'm a customer success manager here on Tagoio. And today we're going to be talking about access management. So we're going to go down a couple of paths there. We're going to talk about access management for the actual users. So we're going to explore a little bit the roles. And then we're going to talk about access management for the analysis itself and the script workspace. So today I have with me Vitor Lima. He's an application developer here at Taguayo, who's going to give us a live demo at the end on that scenario on practice. So what do we expect to cover today? Why and when using the access management, right? We obviously know that they are essential for any IoT applications when you're having multiple customers or organizations, and especially hierarchies inside the application in which you need to distribute this access accordingly to your users. So we're going to review the concept and steps to get there, some examples. I have brought in the example from our Kickstarter app, so you already are familiar with that. We have a similar structure that can be used for many other IoT applications as a first step. So we'll go from there. The settings, visibility conditions, so how we can enable and disable visibility conditions for certain users upon their criteria. And then we're going to have the live practice and the Q&A at the end. So first of all, let's understand why and when to use the access management, right? So when we're building an IoT application, we have to visualize that there might be different levels of access to this particular organization we're building. First of all, let's understand the customer itself, right? So the customer is the top hierarchy. So your client, right? So your client will be the top hierarchy as an administrator. They might have other clients or users below them. So then we need to figure, I have an administrator of the application who have access to everything inside the application. But I might have a guest user that works for me or as a technician that's going on the field that he needs to access this application, either being as a view-only user, or he may have some crew permissions here and there that need to be adjusted in the sense that they need to have availability to perform certain tasks, right? So that can be defined really well when talking about the access managements for roles and permissions. And then we have the other side, which is for our analysis itself. So when we're building an analysis, say that this analysis need to create a device or access data from a particular device, change parameters, and analysis that will affect your devices, your user, your application, they must be strictly be given the right permissions, so you don't risk to in inflicting other modules of your application. So regardless if you're doing something simple on your analysis, you can define the access rules using the parameters on the access management tab very well. And we're going to cover that today. So this is how our access management layout looks today. In this example, I don't know if you can see there the targets, but we're going to show on practice later. The target is what you are using to use it as a base so you can target your permission. So in this case here, I'm using the analysis ID is equal to handler, and I'm giving my handler analysis permission to perform some certain things. So it can access a device, can create a device, can access a dashboard, create a dashboard, create users, create other alerts. Should this analysis have access to open another one or interact with another analysis? This is where we're going to do that. also for our customers. So we have a couple concepts here to define our customers' permission. We have our tags, so we can assign a particular user, such as customer A will have a customer type key equal tag value customer A will be able to access the dashboards and devices that also have the same tag. And on the application side, could be a bit different. We could actually have the analysis generating the IDs for their respective hierarchies. And then we're going to use tag match because we want to match that user's permission with the actual ID that was generating for them. So it can be very robust depending on the hierarchy, but this brings us innumerous possibilities of setting up roles and permissions both for users and for analysis on Toggle. So now let's see the steps, right? So the first thing is to define the policies from run user and analysis. So what is the expectation for a certain access for a run user and analysis? So then we need to write this down and say, okay, I have a hierarchy of company, and then I have site, and then I have sensor. So let's say that under company, I have multiple sites. As an administrator of the company, I want to give a supervisor access to one of these sites. So then I need to define my target based on this information. I could also have a third user, which will be a guest that could have access to a particular sensor only inside a site. So that can also be defined on our access management policies, and it can be automatized, and we could have a routine to do this automatically through our analysis and scripts. So when the actual administrator of that company register a new user, we already have the analysis performing all that back tasks to then register the user, provide the IDs, send them the invitations accordingly so they can access that portal in the manner. So that's the first thing. Creating the permissions for the targets towards the resources, devices, dashboards, could be alerts. It could be more than device. It could be device provisioning. It could be issuing PDF reports and any other functionality that is limited to them. So then we specify these actions for creating visualization are known CRUD, right? So let's check out this example setup. This setup can be seen on our GitHub, particularly the Analysis Kickstarter repository. There's a guide there for that application, and this information is on that guide. So I'll drop the link later on when Vitor starts presenting, so you have access on it, because then you'll have a bit more context on how this works. But basically, I can see here that my admin, he's on the top of my roles and permissions chain. So here he can create everything that we have on the application. So he can create organizations, groups, sensors, reports, plans for the customers. These are all modules that are available on the Kickstarter today and are ready to go. What does the organization admin can do? So he is below the admin, but he's going to impact his organization alone. So that means that I, as an administrator, created an organization for my client. So now my client, the organization admin, will be able to create a guest, which will have a view-only permission over all these modules, but cannot change the setup that's already there. It's going to be mainly for view-only purpose. So this graphic here represents really well what we have on the Kickstarter today. And from them, you can imagine that you can expand a lot from this environment to what best fits your case, your application, right? And then, so we have defining access. So in this case here, we're using tag match, like I mentioned before. These parameters here, they are related to the Kickstarter roles and permissions. So here we're capturing organization ID, we're capturing group ID. So these tags, they correspond to a generated ID by my organization. So that means that I had a routine pre-built just for this, to capture what is the ID of the user and vectoring their permission. So when they receive the invites, they will already have permission to all the modules that were assigned to them by their administrator. So here I'm using 4 parameters, and on the bottom, I'm passing over the permissions to them in terms of the devices, the dashboards, and the run user permission itself. So here on the bottom, you can see the device. We're providing the parameter of organization ID. So the second, we have the group ID for the device, and on the third, we have user organization ID for the device. And then we have for the dashboard, and then we have our settings device holding this together. So the configuration of this organization is held inside the settings device. And then we have the run user that's carrying that organization ID that we generated. So let's check it out what each of them means. So now we can correlate things and see why all this makes sense. So the first tag is access. The value is admin. So this, whichever user has this permission, this is going to be the top administrator. He's going to be able to see all organizations, all groups, all sites, all sensors, right? And he's able to create users below him. So he's able to create a guest user, and he's able to create an organization administrator. So here we can see that then below him, you will have the organization ID. So a user with a certain organization ID will go to that organization's dashboard, right? With all the sensors and sites inside that organization. And then we have the organization user ID. So these give access to the devices of an organization for guest users. So this is our guest permission right there. He's below the organization owner, the organization admin, but the organization admin itself can provide permissions to them. So in this case here, we have admin, organization admin, and guest in order. And then the bottom one, the site ID, is where we group things. So let's say I have 4 sensors on company A. But then on company A, I have restaurant 1 as an example and restaurant 2. So I want to split 2 sensors for each group. So this is where the site ID comes along, because then now I can group the sensors that I've created into 2 different groups, and I can provide access to my users accordingly. So how does that looks like on the settings? So first step, if you are at the top of the hierarchy, is create and invite multiple users. Then you create your access level hierarchy. So based on the last slide that I showed, what is the hierarchy that you need inside your application? Then you can just think that it's not only 1 or 2 dashboards that you have on an application, but you can have a dashboard for the administrator, which can see, maybe have a global view of all the sensors, all the alerts going on all sensors, at least. Then you have the actual client's dashboard, which can be more colloquial, more user-friendly, let's say a better, more lighter UX and UI. In parallel, you could have the technician's dashboard, which could be more complex for view and purpose of the technician itself to capture failures or messages, interact with the device, do actual maintenance on the software by capturing feedback, and adjustments itself. So you can have different users seeing the same data, but in different ways, right? And you use tags to define their access level. So the same principle that we used before. Now we have the capability of applying in multiple permissions, right? So we establish these access policies to apply those restrictions, right? Which can see each thing. So visibility conditions, it's important topic because sometimes you are at a dashboard where there are multiple users have levels to access the dashboard. Let's do this. Let's consider the technician scenario, right? So you are at a dashboard. There's multiple tabs on the dashboard, but there are two there that they are rather technical. You don't want the end user to see that. So then you can add, let's think of a simple, you can add a tag to that particular technician, say, I don't know, user type technician, and you'll limit the tab visibility only to that particular technician. So that means that you could have one dashboard there for your users with selected tabs, and then you have two extra tabs for your technician. Let's say it's the water and energy metering of an apartment building, in which the homeowner, he's seeing temperature, humidity, nevertheless, air quality, lights on and off, open and close. And then on the technician's view, he'll have water and energy metering with current, max load, percentual load, consumption, and other factors that may not be limited to the run user in this application. So this is a very simple example, but then you can imagine that you have much less effort on having to create different dashboards. You can create one dashboard, but then use the visibility conditions on the tab to choose to who you want to display this data to, right? You can also have different sensor types. So if you want to show dashboard for different sensor types, you can use visibility conditions as well to assist you with that. The rule will be similar. You could use tags to identify the type of device that you have and assign that with the user that's going to be receiving that dashboard visualization on his end, right? So now I gave a bit of overview here to you in theory how that looks like and with some examples. Now I'm going to pass over the mic to Vitor. Vitor is going to share with us live practice how that will look like. Vitor, it's with you.
Hello, everyone. So Vitor is here. Let me try to show you some hands-on on what Thiago just told you and explained it very well. I try to make this easier because it's actually very simple to use. So I am in my profile here and I have set up a kind of application here to show you how this all work with the access management. I think first thing I want to show you is the analysis part. I think this is the quickest one. So I have an analysis here. And if you have worked with an analysis already, analysis requires access to perform a request to our API and get the information that you want. So for example, here I have an analysis that gets my device list. And if I try to run this without setting any kind of access rules for this analysis, I actually get this message here, no device found, that only happens if I don't get any device. But as you can see here, I actually have two devices in this account. So device is not showing up for me because I don't have the access rules set up here for this analysis to be able to see these devices in my account. So how can I fix that? We can go to the access management and create a policy here, and we're going to call here analysis device list, for example, and I can pick a target between user or analysis. In this case, I pick the analysis, and I can choose or pick my analysis here directly from the drop downs by its ID. If I do have multiple analyses, or I just want to give access to all my analyses, I have all these options here. A tag is very useful, so you don't need to set up several access policies or coming back here and editing new analysis to this single policy. But for the sake of the demonstration here, I'm just going to pick directly the only one I have. And then I need to give permissions. So which permissions this analysis would have. So we have a lot of options here. In my situation, I just want to access the list of devices. So I can pick the device as my option. And then for the rules, just going to give the access so he can see the devices that are in my account. As you can see here, a lot of different access you can give. Also, since we are here at this topic of the access management, all this exists for giving you some kind of security, right? You can have analyses that are running externally on AWS or Azure, or running inside Tago, or you just don't want to get in a situation, for example, where you have an analysis that is deleting devices or users from your account. So you may not want this analysis to, by mistake or by someone's error, deleting wrong devices, that this analysis should even be knowing that these devices exist. So this is very important when you are scaling up your application. And this kind of problem is something that you really want to avoid. So here I can pick a tag or an ID. For example, if I can only want to give access to a single device, I did set up some tags here. So let me join this device, go to the tags. So I have set up some tags ID, with ID, and I usually use this device type so I can easily differentiate devices for my rules. So I'm going to use this one device type sensor to pick only this device because this is the only one I have with this tag. So let's use the tag here, device type sensor, and create this policy. Okay, so now that I have this policy created, I can go back to my analysis and see if now it can get my device. Yes, so from my list here, it's now fetching my device, can see it, but it cannot see the other device that I have. So I think this is a very good use case as well, because if you give access to all the devices of your account, you would be doing this filter here, right? So when you want to fetch a list of devices, you would come here, create a filter, and filter by the name of the device or the tags directly in your call. Doing the access management, you could actually omit this information because the device will not be able to get any other device anyway that do not have the tag that had been set in your access policy. And just for the sake of demonstration here, let's say I give access to all the devices, I would be able now to fetch all the devices from my account, which is only 2. So I have the device. I'm getting the name. Let me get the name here. Yes, so I think this is going to be easier to show. Yes, so I have my device customer 1 and my device Taguayo device here. So about analysis, I think this is the only thing you want to know about the access policy. There's no much else you can do. Of course, you can do the block as well, which is denying access. So for example, if I am allowing all the devices, but let's say tags are too different, I cannot filter by specific tags. You can do this deny, and instead of picking which devices you want to allow, you start to pick the device that you don't want to allow access, or even giving access to multiple rules for specific devices, but denying to other devices. So you can do all this through here. So let's say I'm giving access to all the devices, but I don't want to have access to Tagoyo device. I can do this. And by the way, if you have a deny rule in your policy, it takes priority over any allow rule, right? So it doesn't matter if it's the first one, if it's the last one, it will get priority and the deny will go first. So if I go back to my analysis here, let me open again, analysis, and run, I should see only my customer 1 device because the Tagoyo device is blocked from the deny rule. Of course, that also applies for users. So let's see how users works. So access policies for users only are useful if you are using the Tago run, right? Otherwise, there's no effect at all for your account. So I have my Tago run set up here, have my URL, and I have created a user here. So let me log in as this user. Okay, so as you can see here, I can log in, but I don't have access to any dashboard. So none of the dashboards loads. By the way, I have set up a sidebar here with the buttons that I want, and what this button do is opening these 2 dashboards here. So how to fix this problem? If I want to give access to a user, I will need to create a policy. So let's call users policy. And I can also do the ID thing. So I can pick my user, create a policy, and give access to my dashboard. That is the easy one, right? So now they can see the dashboard. Let me get back to the policy here. And now if I go to my dashboard, I can now access the dashboard. So this dashboard is actually a blueprint device, which means it needs the user to also have access to the devices that for the dashboard. So in this case, I only give this user access to the dashboard, but have not given him access to any device. So one way to do this would be to create another permission here, giving access to my device, customer 1. But a more fancy way to do that is actually using tag match. So let's use tag match to automatically pick the user and the dashboards the user can access using the tags of both the dashboard, tags from the device, and tags from the user. So the tip I'm going to give you now is more for scaling up your application, right? You don't want to go to the access management and create policy for each user you create. What you actually want to do when you are scaling is to have a single policy for a type of user and use the tag match. So the only thing you need to do is create the user, the devices with the correct tags, which is more easier to do if you are using analysis to create the devices or the API. So let's do this. First thing I want to check is the tags of my user. So I have a user here with organization ID. So this is going to help me give access to the devices, but the dashboards don't care about the ID at all, right? Dashboards usually want to do by some other tag like user type and call this end user, for example. So let's create this tag and save. And go straight to the dashboard. So I wanted this user to have access to the device list and to the sensor view. What I can do here is go into the configuration of the device list, go into tags, and add here the user type end user. So it needs to be the same key, the same value, so it can match with the tags of the user. Those we call it tag mapped. And I also want for the sensor view to be accessible. So create here user type and user. So now that I have two of my dashboards with the same tag of my user here, user type and user, I can now create my policy for the user. So instead of picking the user, I'll go tag match. I choose the tag that I want to match the values, which is the tag key user type. And for dashboard, I can use tag match and automatically fills up the user type here. So this will work for the dashboard, but I also need to give access to the device. So I can do similar thing here. I have my user here at the tag organization ID with an ID that I generated myself, or just copy from the IDs that Tagoyo gives you. And I want to match with my devices. So I can go to devices here. And I can see I have the tag device type for both the devices. So, and yeah, I do have organization ID here as well. So you can see they are all the same value. So for example, customer one would be a database device that you give for a user to store some information for that specific user. And the Tago device is my actual device, and it belongs to the same user, so choose the same IDs here. So it means, oh, I did close the user's policies. So let me do this quickly again, user type. And I also want the organization ID now. And I can come here, device, give access, and tag match. And for the devices, I want to give access based on the values of the organization ID tag. So in this, so just rewinding here, I'm going to match the values from organization ID from my user, from the tag organization ID, with the tag of my device's value for the organization ID. And for the dashboard, I'm going to use the user type tag that I put on my user to match with the values of the dashboard that has the key user type. And if those values are the same, the user is going to have access to this both dashboard and device. So if I press save here and go back here to my user, refresh the page, and now I have access to my customer, has access to device as well. And if I click here, I also have access to the sensor view with my device position on the map. So regarding the access management, I think there's not much else to talk about. You can match different policies, deny, enable, activate, deactivate your access managements, but Tagoyo do have more management rules other than that. So for example, let me pick a dashboard that is easy. Okay. So for example, I can have multiple tabs here in this dashboard. Let me create another tab here. And let's call this admin version. I can save. Then I'm going to have two tabs here. And the way I have done this, the user is going to see the two tabs. So let me duplicate this to the second tab. Okay, and this one I'll just put here on the corner so we can see that is different dashboards. So if I go to my user here and access the device list, I have the two tabs. But you can actually filter which tabs the user has access within a dashboard. The way you do that is by going back to the tabs, and you have the visibility conditions of each tab here. So I can configure that. And by the way, you can do the visibility condition based on the blueprint device or the user tag. For this demo, I'm going to show you only the user tag. And you can pick the user type and say that these tabs are only going to show up if the user has the tag user type with end user. And for the second tab here, I'm going only to show this if the user has, let's say, admin as user type. So as a developer, I can see both, but my user already cannot see the second tab. And this is automatically, right? So if a user click this button and he's admin, the second tab will show up, but not the first one. And he would even know that there is another tab because we completely removed from any API call. So there's no way they can get information of other tabs or access buttons in different tabs. So I think this is very useful. Another feature we have regarding access is the run sidebar. So you do have these sidebars, and same as you have in the dashboard, you can configure which buttons you show up to your user based on the tag they have. So for example, if you don't want to show device list, the button for a specific customer, you can set here that this button will only going to show up if the user has admin tag, for example. And what this is going to do is then my user here that is an end user is not going to see the device list button anymore. Since he do have access to the dashboard because of the access permission, it shows up here in the sidebar. But if you want to completely hide this dashboard from the user, you can come here on the More tab, turn this off. It's going to only show up here for you in your list, but for the user, it's not going to show up anymore at all. Because when the dashboard is not visible, the only way you can access the dashboard is if you know the endpoint or if you have a sidebar button. Yeah, I think that covers all I have to show you regarding setting up permissions. There's a lot of advanced things that you can do with this. Everything that I have shown you here is kind of basic to medium level, but you can combine different tags to create very complex policies and rules for your application. Thiago, do we have any question?
Amazing presentation, Victor. I think that was really clear from the analysis perspective, the user perspective. I think we cover very broadly. One thing that came to my mind that may be useful for some is the use of the anonymous user, right? Is there any special things that we need to do to set like a public dashboard using the anonymous user?
Yeah, so when you have the anonymous user, you actually create one here, right? So go to add user. You are going to have an option here to create anonymous user. It's not showing up because I already have one, this one. And the anonymous user works as any other kind of user, but you don't know who's accessing the dashboard. They are not going to log in to the platform or to your application at all. But you can share links with them and they would be able to see whatever they have access with a link. So everything that I have shown you about setting up permissions for a single user or a type of user would apply here for anonymous user. So let's call this user type anonymous, for example. And if I want to get a, let me pick the device list here. If I want to get the link for the user, I'll need to go here to the configuration, share public, and I have the public link. This one I can share with anyone. If I open here, yeah, I don't have access to the dashboard, right? I am an anonymous user, but I have not have given access to this dashboard yet. So let me get back to the access management, users policy. So in this case, we have set up tag match. So all we need to do is actually go into the dashboard. We want to give access to the anonymous user and add the user type again, but this time we also want the anonymous user to access the dashboard. Now, if I go back to my link, I can now access the dashboard, but I don't have access to the tab, right? So I need to give access to the tab as well, because previously I set up that only end user can see the tab. Call it anonymous, confirm. Um, Have I pressed save? I don't remember. Yeah, that's the case. So now this anonymous user do have access to the dashboard and the devices because it also has the tag for customer ID, if I do remember well. Oh, anonymous tags, user type anonymous, and the user's policy. Oh, the anonymous do have access to the device, right? If I do not set up. So let me set up one here. Let's pick the organization ID. And I need to pick the value I have put for the devices. Yeah, I've done very quickly here, but I should be able to understand. Just doing the tag mapping things, ensuring we have access to to the features of the dashboard. So same thing, I try to access the sensor view, to not access. I need to go to the dashboard and also give access to anonymous user to access this dashboard. And I go to share public, copy my URL, and I can access the dashboard, navigate, whatever you have given access to the user here. What do you think, Thiago?
Yeah, that's great, Victor. That now I think we covered broadly the possibilities here. And just a reminder, everybody, we have the Learning Center. There's over 24 hours of courses there. We have the basic and the advanced for the access management. So if you have any questions up at this point you want to explore a little more, I advise you to go to toggle.io, the menu resources, and then Learning Center. There you can capture broadly the step-by-step. And I also strongly advise for you to check the Kickstarter because there we have a guide with a set of permissions very well explained on an existing structure. We don't have any other questions as of now. So, Vitor, thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone that joined. We're gonna be sending this webinar. We're gonna be publishing it to our website shortly after the presentation. And see you all on our next webinar. Thanks, everybody.